One of the important factors in protecting animal health is correctly giving injections and taking care in how you manage your tools and your animal health products when you're working chute side. We turn again to Dr. Ron Gill for some tips and ideas on working with your tools and your cattle chute side.
When we look at the different tools that are available and the scenarios where a lot of us work, that would be open air, not in buildings in the southern tier states. The northern states might have covers over their facilities, but very often we have our equipment exposed to the elements, whether it be sunlight, whether it be heat or cold. In some areas the cold is just as damaging or more so than heat would be. But we need to think about the different types of products that we're going to use. There are a lot of different syringes. A lot of people might not use anything but these disposable syringes. They work very effectively, but I encourage everybody to use them as a single dose delivery system and not try to use multiple doses out of one, because if you're off on one animal, you'll be off on another one. So once again, they work good for single dose, which hardly anybody uses them for that. That's why we don't normally recommend we use anything more than a 2 or 5 cc syringe for administering products to cattle. Then we have these, a lot of people call pistol grip or multi-dose syringes. They come in either 25 mil or 50 mil designs. The 50 mil design, if you're using 5 cc products, we normally recommend them. If you're using 2 cc products, we normally recommend the 25 dose syringes. The reason for that is we don't want the vaccine to be in the syringe that long. The more it's in the syringe, the more it's exposed to different elements, whether it be sunlight, heat, or cold. And if we're doing 2 cc products, we have to process 25 animals before we have to refill this syringe. And a lot of people like that, but there's some downside to it that your vaccine may not be as effective if you do that. The other thing, most cattlemen are not prone to change the syringe very often. We recommend we change at least every 10 head. And if you're using a syringe, it'll get you to go through 25. You'll normally go through 25 before you change. So these will at least get you to change every time you fill your syringe, and that's a really good practice and protocol to have, is every time somebody goes back into a vaccine bottle, they change the needle on the syringe. So that'd be the appropriate way to do that. Now you notice this syringe has somewhat of a clear barrel, a little older design. This one has more of an opaque barrel, and it will keep some of the ultraviolet light out. But a lot of people are mistaken in thinking that's safe, because the heat and cold will still damage vaccine if left out in it. Sunlight, not so bad, but once again, use those as they should be as well. We now have some syringes such as this where we actually can attach the bottle to the outside of the syringe. They're very handy, easy to use. Your vaccine is always there. One of the issues I have with these is if you set it down, sometimes you can get an air pocket, and it's very difficult to ever get the air pocket out of one of these syringes without wasting vaccine. The other thing, this can be broken as you go in and out of a chute, breaking the neck off of it, and if you don't have some spares, then you're out of business for the day, so always have backups for these. Another one on a similar concept are these that have hoses. This is a preferred method for a lot of people, where the hose attaches directly to the syringe and then the other end to the bottle. The problem with that is the hose. That hose can expose vaccine to sunlight and expose it to more of the elements, particularly if it's cold. I would not use one of these if it's below freezing. I keep mentioning freezing is more detrimental than heat, because even on a killed vaccine, if it gets too cold and freezes that cell in there, it will rupture and render the vaccine ineffective, and in some cases even toxic. So we have to be very careful about freezing our vaccine, whether it be in our syringes, our processing area, or chute side. I know a lot of places in some of the colder areas will actually have the vaccine freeze in the syringe. In the southern tier states, we worry more about heat, but we can also use a cooler to keep things warm. And so sometimes we don't think about using it for both. I always like to go to the corral with a cooler with my vaccine in it. As you open the top on that, I always want to see cool packs, unless it's in really cold weather. Then you wouldn't need that. I also, if I have a big enough cooler, I will put my syringes, particularly in the heat, in with a cool pack on the way to process cattle. The reason I do that, if you've ever seen what some people do, they'll throw these up on the dash of the pickup as they go to process cattle. They pull them off the dash after they have everything gathered, and they're really hot. And that can actually destroy some of the vaccine on the first draw as you pull it in there. So anything that comes in contact with that vaccine that's too excessive in heat can cause damage. So if you can, keep these at least cooled off as you go to the processing area. Have your vaccine in what I'd call a storage cooler. This would be what I'd call a working cooler. I come up with this idea many years ago because I got tired of taking the lid off a cooler as I was trying to process cattle at the chute. Very simple. You just cut holes in the side of it and you can stick your syringe in it. That way it's readily available as you need to get your syringe and go process cattle. Now let's talk a little bit about what the procedures would be as we're processing an animal through the chute. We should always make sure we're prepared. Very often I see everybody get in such a hurry, they'll load the chute and then go to doing all this stuff in preparation. Make sure you're ready to start processing cattle before you start loading the chute. Once we are ready, we want to bring the cattle in as quiet as possible. Once again, step down their side, pull them forward. Like cattle in self-catch head gate, or if you have somebody helping you, that works great. I like to let the cattle come in. If they will, step back. Squeeze the cattle down, and that gives a very good open area on this side of the neck. Take your syringe, and as you come out of the box, that's why I like this cooler. You can pull that syringe out very easily, come to the neck, and I like to tent the skin. Go in through the side of the tent. You once again try to pull the skin onto the needle here so you're not jobbing the needle at yourself. Once it's under the skin, you can tell it's free, then you can deliver your dose. If you do it with a good sharp needle, the animal rarely reacts. Once the needle goes in them, they're still quite ready for the next animal to come in. Once you're through with that, you can put your syringe back in there until you're ready for the next animal. If you have cattle running at chute speed in a processing area at a feedlot or a receiving yard, you're probably not going to need this because you're going so fast it really won't matter. But most cow-calf operations will slow down enough at some point in time they'll need to store their syringes in some type of cooler or apparatus like that. Once they're done, we're then ready to release the cattle. We'd like for it to be where they can come straight out so they're not going to make a sharp turn when they first come out the chute. Once you do that, you're ready for the next one. Step down the chute, run your hand down the back if they're balking a little bit. Put a little touch on them. And if cattle won't go forward into the self-catch, very often just giving them that little bit of time will allow them to do that. Once they set back, their head's a little more secure, and you're ready to process the next one. If it's an intermuscular injection, you want to go straight into this muscle area in the center of the neck, deliver your dose, come straight out. That area right below the ligament of the neck and above the spine and the lower part of the neck is all muscle tissue, and that's where all of our intramuscular shots should go. But if you're not doing one or two things to them, you can go pretty fast as you're processing your cattle.
To find out more about smart chute-side protocols and the Beef Quality Assurance Program, visit bqa.org.